Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, how the heck are you? It is March when you are hearing this. Jenna and I were supposed to record today, but she had something come up, so she is not going to be here, and I had to come up with something to talk about. Just a quick update. Burnout seems to be gone. I did a full aquafit class on Saturday. It felt amazing. Steve is out of town right now. I'm walking the dog, and I think the only thing I have to say about burnout is if you have the privilege of resting and really listening to your body, that has been one of the most helpful things. And I'm not going to talk too much about this because I want to talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is relationships and things that work and things that don't work, because I hear so many people talk about struggles with relationships. But if you're able to really honor your rhythms and know that you're going to have times when you're going to be more productive and doing more things and times when you can't, and when you're in full burnout, a lot of stuff just stops. It is a privilege to be able to care for yourself. I just wanted to give you a little update. I also realized that I think it's whatever the last solo episode that I did, 232 maybe, I talked really quickly, and I'm sorry. I'll try not to do that this time. What I want to do is I want to talk about things that are red flags in relationships, and then I want to talk about things that are really qualities that are ideal that you want to have in a relationship. And I don't think that we're ever taught how to look for these things. And this can be in a work relationship, a romantic relationship, friendships, how you might want to have relationships with your kids, whether they're small or adults. I think these are just good values to be aware of. Understand there is no linear right or wrong. There are always going to be shades. I think if you're in a relationship with someone who has a different neurotype than you do, you're going to have different problems. It's just how it is. And I can't address all of that today, but let's just get right down to it. This isn't really about dating, but if you are using a dating app and their profile doesn't match who they are, do they look different? Are they using an outdated profile picture? That can be an indication that people are not comfortable with who they are and they're not presenting authentically about who they are. How do they describe their past relationships and their past partners? And if they use a lot of negative and derogatory terms or they blame, that's an indication of how they see people. And how do they make sense of things that don't work? Do they take accountability for their part in the relationship that didn't work? If they are jealous, if they have controlling behavior, they want to know, where are you going? Who are you going to be with? How long are you going to be there for? If they start wanting to give you a makeover. So again, there's a difference between somebody being generous and giving you something, but if they start telling you what to wear and what shoes to wear and to either look more sexy, less sexy, to cover up, to not cover up, those are controlling behaviors. If they start tracking you, those are things that are really not ideal. Do they put you down even if it's in a teasing manner? And often when we're neurodivergent, people will say things like, oh, you're so sensitive, but I think it's sweet. Or, you always seem to have to eat the same thing or go to this place. Those are not supportive and kind things. And even if it's done in the guise of being friendly, cheerful, playful, that's a nope. Do they move too quickly in the relationship? Now, it's possible for you to meet someone and you both connect and you both mutually decide that you are really feeling it for each other and you want to move quicker in the relationship than you normally would. But if you're setting boundaries and you're someone who wants to take your time and they're testing your limits and testing your boundaries, not okay. And that can be in the frequency of phone calls, texts, getting together, how physically close you are, if you're ready to spend the night with them. All of those things are boundaries, and whoever needs the most space in a relationship is the one that should get it. This is a really good one. How do they treat people in the service industry? If you go out to eat, how do they treat the hostess, your server? If the mail carrier comes, if you're out in the store, all of these things, do they treat people with respect and kindness? Are they friendly to them? Do they degrade them? Do they criticize? Because if this is how they treat people that they feel like are service people, that's a pretty good indicator. Are you constantly fighting or having misunderstandings or miscommunication? Now, there's a difference between having miscommunication and misunderstanding and being willing to work it through, or are there constant problems? When I dated my first husband, really the whole marriage was either very good or fraught with conflict. And we seemed to have constant challenges. And it wasn't until my husband, Steve, and I got together that it's not that we don't have problems, but when things come up, we are able to work them through. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like on the other side. But if there is constant fighting, it's very emotional, high emotions, that's a red flag. How about listening to you? Do they attune to you? Do they really hear you? Do they know what's important to you? Do they know what matters to you? Or do they just focus on themselves and not really have that ability to attune to you and your needs? Are they sensitive to your needs and what you need? When you're having a hard time, do they know how to provide comfort and support? Are they there for you? Do they show up, or are they not available? If you text them or call them or ask them for something, are they responsive? Are they kind? Are you their only source of support? What do their relationships look like with other people, with their family? Now, some people choose not to have contact with their family. There are often very good reasons for this. So that in itself is not a red flag. But do they have other support? Do they have friends? Or are you the only person? And if you're the only person, what is their explanation for not having a support system? Do they push boundaries in innocent ways? And again, that can be needing a little bit more space, needing less contact. And do they continue to push, or do they respect your boundaries? And, boundaries are a really challenging area for many of us. But if somebody sets a boundary with you, how do you feel about it? I really appreciate when people let me know where they start and where they end and what they need, because I like those guidelines. It's important for people to respect my boundaries, but I also want to know what other people need, and having that communication. If you set a boundary with someone and they're like, how come you're being so picky? Or how come you're not flexible? Or how come you won't blah, blah, blah? That is an indication that they do not have respect for you and what your needs are. Do your friends and family not want to spend time with your partner or who you're dating? That's kind of a good indication that if other people that you enjoy spending time with don't want to be with your partner, what's that about? Do they gaslight you? Do they make you question yourself? So you can talk about having a conflict and they might tell you, I think you're taking this too. So there's a difference. If they say, even something like you're overthinking this, you're being too sensitive, you're ruminating about this, and if it starts making you question yourself. Now, I always talk about being able to hold two things together. And oftentimes we do process things deeply. Sometimes we loop in our thinking. So this is very nuanced in you figuring out, are you being gaslit and are you questioning yourself, or are they being supportive, or are they saying, I think you're being too sensitive about this. I think you're not reading the situation right. I don't feel like I'm doing a very good job of articulating this, but if you walk away wondering if you did something wrong, and they could say, I'm wondering if, and then you get a chance to decide. But if they're telling you and you end up not feeling good about yourself or doubting yourself, or you ask them, how come you said you were going to be here and you were late, or I'm disappointed, and they make it about you, that's gaslighting. They're not owning their part in it. And how do they respond when you're away from them? Do they support you in having your own life, or do they want you to be with them all the time? What I want to talk about now are, what are the qualities that we want to have in a relationship? And you get to decide which one of these fit for you. And if some of them don't, then that's okay too. No relationship is going to be perfect. There are always going to be challenges, but out of these, which are important to you? Are they kind, and do they respect you? Do they respect other people? Do they respect themselves? What is their level of emotional awareness, emotional intelligence? Can they own their behavior? Can they talk about the things that they're not crazy about with themselves? They get angry quickly, or they tend to run late, or they have a hard time opening up in relationships. We don't want a perfect person. We just want an honest person. What is the communication like? It's okay to have conflict. It's okay to have hard conversations. Are they able and willing to have those conversations? And if you have a different neurotype, I was just talking with a client today that often, if you are neurodivergent, you may be very clear about details, about processes, remembering lots of things, and you may have a partner who has a different neurotype, doesn't recall conversations, doesn't recall details. You may be a verbal processor. They may be like, I don't know. That can be challenging, but if you can acknowledge that you have different styles and different neurotypes, it's totally doable. Is there trust? Do you trust them? Do they trust you? Do they do what they say they will do? Are they reliable? Can you count on them? Of course, things come up, but if they say they're going to do something and they're not, do they let you know that? Do they explain why? We don't have to be perfect, but we want to own our behavior. We want people to be able to count on us. Do they support your goals? Do you support each other's goals mutually? Is there honesty? Is there vulnerability? Can you have fun together? Do you understand each other? And then there's this concept of independence and interdependence. And I think that we often think that we have to be independent and not need our partners. Interdependence is a beautiful thing, especially if you're neurodivergent. There are so many things that I struggle with that my husband finds very easy. And I often joke that, I'm more of the husband and he's more of the wife. There are certain ways that he's far more nurturing and attentive than I am. And there are other ways that I'm far more nurturing, but those are gender stereotypical roles. But there are many things that he does because he's very good at them and I'm not, and he enjoys doing them. So that interdependence is not a bad thing. And also, are you able to spend time apart? I've talked to you about this, that my husband loves going to concerts. He loves going to Laughlin. Those are not things that I enjoy. I want him to have a very full life. And if those aren't things that I enjoy doing, I'm thrilled that he has people that he can do them with. Sometimes he enjoys going by himself. So that combination of independence, interdependence, do you enjoy having your own time away from your partner, spending time with your friends, spending time together? Those are really important. Do you like each other? Do you like who your partner is? Do you respect them? Do you value their values? Do you make decisions together, or is your partner always making decisions or deferring to you? Again, with neurodivergence, sometimes decision-making can be overwhelming, so that needs to be taken into consideration if you've established a pattern that works for you. But ideally, you would talk things through and come up with solutions and decisions together. Is there a sense of equality? Is there support? Is there attunement? When you're talking about things that are important to you, or you mention things that are important to you, does your partner remember those? And if that means folding down the covers at night, making sure the window is open, making sure there's a favorite snack for you, it doesn't matter what those things are, knowing that you like to sit in the shade or you like to sit in the sun. Those are little ways that we attune to people that we're thoughtful. Again, if you're neurodivergent, also if you're assigned female at birth, if you tend to identify as femme, we have been socialized to cater and be attuned to other people's needs. And so there may be some gender bias in here, or some expectations that don't come as easily or naturally to both partners. Sometimes if you're autistic, sometimes I need people to tell me what they need. I just had a client today that told me about a lot of things that were going on, and I wasn't really sure how to respond. It was a lot of information. And I said, tell me what it is that you would like from me. How can I support you? And they told me. So I may not always know what people need, but being able to have that dialogue is really important. Do they listen to you? Do you feel heard? Do you feel seen? Do you feel valued? Again, if you're neurodivergent, sometimes we need things a certain way. If you have a PDA profile, pathological demand avoidance, or pervasive drive for autonomy, it's about having low demands, having a sense of independence, being able to feel like nobody's controlling us, being the boss of us. That can create some challenges in relationships, but is there awareness and respect for that in the relationship? There are always going to be competing needs in a relationship. You want something, your partner wants something else. Are you able to compromise? Does one person always give in? Are you able to come up with solutions that work for both people? Is there empathy? Can they show tenderness and caring when you're going through something that is hard? Can they emotionally attune to you? Are they kind? Are they generous? One of the things that was important to me is I wanted to have a partner that if we went somewhere, like if we went to a party, my partner was willing to pitch in and clean up. Someone who's aware and kind of group-minded was important to me. Are they reliable? Do you have similar values and goals? Now, my husband and I politically are not aligned. Our votes basically cancel each other out. It is very possible to not have the same values in everything. But can you work through that? Can you agree to disagree? Can you agree that there are certain things that you don't talk about because it doesn't work? Everything doesn't have to match up, but can you work with what the differences are? Are you committed? Many of us have attachment wounds. We didn't learn this stuff. When there's conflict, we want to leave. We threaten to leave. Are you committed to staying in the relationship? Or if you're getting to know somebody, are you committed to staying for today while you're figuring out if this relationship works? I'm not implying that anybody should stay in a relationship that doesn't work, but if you always have one foot out the door because of your attachment injuries and trauma, that makes it challenging to have a secure relationship. What are the things that I missed? I'm sure that there are many more things that I missed, but I think that this gives you a good foundation. And I think it's really important that when things are hard, how do you work together? When one person is in crisis, if somebody gets sick or a family member gets sick or there's a problem with a vehicle or somebody loses their job, gets hard news, how do you manage? And can the support, it's not always going to be 50-50. Sometimes it's going to be 10-90. Sometimes it's going to be 40-70. No, 40-60. But having that flexibility to adjust. And I think around conflict, knowing that two things can be true, that your partner may say or do something that feels hurtful or you're upset about, but it's possible that that wasn't their intention. Are you able to hold more than one thing at a time and not always having somebody have to be right or wrong? But I think being curious and understanding what someone's intention was. And I often will ask my husband, can you help me understand why you made that decision or how did you come to that decision? Because it doesn't make sense to me and I want to go into judgment or feeling angry or hurt. But being curious and wanting to seek understanding, I think can really go a long way. It's also okay if you have conflict or disagreements and feelings get high. It's okay to take time. If you need time to process, ideally you would be able to communicate that you need time and you either say when you will come back to revisit this or you agree to revisit it. But to just leave and to not communicate, that can be really hard on the relationship. I did that to someone in a relationship that things got very heated and I just withdrew and I said I need to pull back and I did not say when I would come back to the relationship. And I didn't realize in the moment how harmful that was. When I did realize, I apologized and I really try and be mindful now that if I get activated, that I try and communicate when I'm going to come back. It's also okay to have heated, passionate disagreements. What we don't want is name calling, labeling people, labeling their behavior, bringing up every injustice that's happened in the past. But it's okay if we're reactive, meaning that we get our feelings hurt, feelings run high. It is not okay to be abusive. But I think that we have this idea, especially if you have a very internalized, highly controlled profile, that often our expectation is that, well, I can control it and you should be able to control it as well. As a couple, you will need to decide, how do you feel when your partner raises their voice, and does that activate things for you? And you will need to negotiate that. So please understand that I'm not indicating that it's okay to yell at each other, but I also want to be clear that it's okay to get heated, passionate, reactive, as long as it's not abusive. Are you able to hang out and not do anything together? Now, some people are very active and they like to be doing things all the time, but are you able to just hang out when things are the way that they are? Do you like their friends? Do they like your friends? And again, not all friends are going to like each other, but if there's a very strong division here and there's a reason for it, I think that's something that needs to be looked at. I think that that's all I have. I'm sure that there are more things that I have not thought of. Feel free to drop me a line if there's something that feels really important that I missed. So I think that's going to be it for today. I hope you are doing well. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's how you're wired. You have a right to all of your feelings, whether they're pleasant, unpleasant, big, or small. You have a right to feel connected. It's okay if people don't like you. You don't have to like everybody. It's okay to get angry. It's okay to get dysregulated. It's okay to be calm. It's okay to rest. It's okay to take self-care. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay if you feel guilty and uncomfortable when you set boundaries. Sometimes that just happens. It's okay if you are in a peaceful place where things are going very well. It's okay if you're in an in-between place. And it's okay if you're not okay today, as long as you're not suffering and there's not something that you need to do because you're in a place that really is where you need to get help. If you're interested in working with me, you can reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. I think that's all I have. I hope you're doing well. Have a great day. Bye-bye.